Please welcome your moderator, Doug Lipp, former head of training at Walt Disney Studios Disney University and author of Disney U.
What a pleasure being with all of you here again. The title of the podcast is Leadership, Training, and Your Profitability, Lessons from Disney U. Now, these podcasts will bring to life the leadership and training strategies enjoyed not only by Disney, but by organizations that are large as well as small. Now, don't worry, you don't have to have a copy of the book, because during the podcasts, I'll sprinkle in fun quotes and stories from the Disney U book. And most importantly, though, is I want to keep the messages relevant to you. We'll do this via interviews with ODs who are your peers. You'll hear from these fellow professionals who've taken great strides to do a number of things, such as enhance team member skills and motivation, hone their own leadership skills, improve the experience of patients, and also drive profitability. So today, let's kick off this introductory podcast with the following question. How do you know if your organization is ready for training? Now, joining me today are two optometrists to discuss this topic, Dr. Nick Rashid and Dr. Tanya Bradley. Nick and Tanya, would you please introduce yourselves?
Yeah, my name is Nick Rashid. I'm originally from right outside of Lansing, Michigan, and I moved to Fort Lauderdale, Florida around 23 years ago or so to go to optometry school at Nova Southeastern University, where I graduated in 2002, and practiced optometry just all around until 2010, where I opened my practice from scratch, where it was just me, one optician, and my mom ran the front desk. Now, fast forward about 11 years, and now I have about 4 or 5 employees. I fired my mom. And I've hired another doctor. So we have one other doctor and 4 or 5 employees, and things are going great.
Thanks.
I am Tanya Bradley. I am originally from Kentucky. Attended University of Missouri, St. Louis, graduated in 2011. Right after school, I joined a practice and bought in Kentucky, near my hometown. 5 years later, sold it, and then decided, like Dr. Rashid, I felt like I needed to go a little warmer weather. So I moved closer to him. So now I'm in Florida as well. So we're both in Florida. I am in North Florida, Amelia Island, and I own a practice here, 2-location practice with, we've got 12 employees. And I just recently hired another optometrist to join me. And it's been going quite great for at least last year was a little rough, but yeah, it's been going great.
Well, thank you both for sharing your background, and we're going to be diving in to the successes and some of the challenges you've both faced, and we're all going to learn from you. And to kind of kick the theme off of this concept of training, I'm going to share a couple of ideas from 2 men that I got to work with who were my mentors at Disney. To be honest, I never got to work with Walt Disney. He died in 1966, and I was only 11 years old then. They weren't hiring 11-year-old kids to run the company. But I had 2 bosses that worked directly with Walt, and they were just like Walt in that they were creative as could be, tough as nails, and also they had hearts of gold. And one was a guy named Jim Cora, and a quote that still resonates with me that he shared with me years ago that I wrote in the Disney U book was, marketing is the time and money you spend to get people to come to your business, to walk in the door. But training, well, that's the investment you make to get cast members to stay and customers to return. So training is really more about the concept of loyalty. And then another mentor of mine was a guy named Van France, and he was the founder of the Disney University. And Van, in his irascible self, had pretty salty language that I won't use today, but I'll give you the essence of his message. And I'll always remember some comments he made to me, and I've jotted them down, so I'm going to kind of paraphrase, but read them at the same time. And one of the comments he made to me when we were having some difficulty in the economy back in the early 80s, he said, if we don't provide what the guest pays for, you and I and everybody else in this company will be out on our individual backsides looking for some other way to make a living. And then he went on to add, there's not one darn thing that you or I or anybody can do about the recession, depression, bankruptcies, unemployment or interest rates, but there are things that you and I can do about improving the friendliness, fun, showmanship, and general happiness of the guests who pay us. Now, maybe you could just alter with what I've written down here and say, instead of bankruptcies, maybe you say COVID, or you add that to it. So that's certainly something that wasn't in play in the early 80s, but it was equally onerous back then to have the challenges we did. So with that preface, perhaps this leads to my first question for both of you to consider. Tell us, what is your experience with training in your practices?
Gosh, for me, I felt like I've done a ton of different ways. I've tried a million different things as far as training is concerned. Sometimes I feel like I just completely fail. I feel like every day I'm trying to do something different. We had one experience, I think, that went really well. We closed our practice down for a day, cleared the schedule, and took the staff out of the office to do a full day training. And so we felt like we had a lot of things that we were doing right, but a lot of things that we could improve upon. And so we felt getting the staff away from the office would kind of get them out of where they worked every day. It would kind of set a different environment for them. And we spent the day learning how to, I taught the whole staff how to do insertion removal of contacts. I was finding not everybody knew exactly how to do that. And we did some billing training. We had some contact lens reps come in and teach us about different new contact lenses and ways to increase profitability on contacts. I felt like my staff really enjoyed that, just because it wasn't our normal. Normally we would just sit in the office for an hour during lunch sometimes and train a little bit, but I felt like we had to get out. I thought keeping my staff happy was a really good thing, and feeding them some good food and kind of getting them laughing and out of their comfort zone was one of the better things that we've done as far as training. I felt like we had done as much as we could just every week in the office for an hour, but we needed to do something more. So we did a full day worth of training, and I think it went really well. It was nice for us.
Yeah. I kind of, I really agree with you. Because I kind of mix it up a little bit. Like we still do our in-office training, and when I first started, I kind of just had the staff train the new hire, like the new employees. And, I noticed a lot of good habits were, being carried on. Also some bad habits were being carried on. So I had to find a way to figure out, let's do the good habits, but get rid of the bad habits. And so then it involved, for us, more in-office training. So we would do some videos kind of just throughout the day. They'd set aside some time and sit in the back room and watch some videos and get some more hands-on. And I'd have them come back with maybe one important thing they learned from the video, whether it's on our software or, like you did, insurance billing or INRs or anything. But we also, we've done the go out to dinners, because, like you, free food always works.
Always helps.
They can pay attention really well with free food. So I think that's always, a benefit for them. And it's, you kind of get that little huddle, you get that camaraderie, and you get this, start to develop a little teamwork when we all go do it together. And I totally agree with you, Dr. Bradley, on that, where you get that, start your confidence, and you get some teamwork doing that.
What's interesting is just the two examples that you each shared. Tanya, yours was a full day, completely different than what you've done before on a weekend. Nick, yours was in the office, and maybe not the extent of time in one sitting, but over time it builds. So it really does represent kind of the spectrum of the way that these things can be offered. And what drives your decision to stay in the office or not stay in the office, have dinner, not have dinner? Those kinds of decisions have to play into the outcome. So what drove your decision, Tanya, for example, to have a full Saturday and the challenges therein?
Well, it wasn't just one thing that kind of led me to that decision. It was more of like the straw that broke the camel's back. And I was finding that we needed to hit on a lot of different topics. And so once I sat down and looked at an entire list of all the topics that I really wanted to review with the staff, it would have taken me 2 years in the timeline that I was doing it. And so I felt, if we can take a full day, we can just review this all at one time. And I think for me, like I mentioned that we taught the whole staff how to do INR. I was finding that, I had a smaller staff, and I was finding that every time I came out and needed someone to teach a patient how to wear contacts, I always had to look, and I couldn't just go to one employee. And so for me, that was kind of the straw that broke the camel's back. Was I'm using my time to search for an employee that could teach INR to a patient, When if I sit down and spent maybe 30 minutes and taught the entire staff at one time, then I could never have to do that again. So I kind of got tired of that. And with me having two offices, I couldn't remember who I taught what. And so for me, it was kind of a time saver. I looked at it as I have this huge list of stuff I want to teach them. I want to get this all done in one quick swoop. And then I knew every single person knew exactly the same type of training. I did it all the same way in front of all of them at once. And it was, it was all consistent. And so that for me was the reason I felt like doing a whole day. It seemed more feasible for me at that time.
Yeah, listen, for me, my straw that broke the camel's back was of the 4 employees when one was sick and one was out on personal leave. And here I was left with half the employees not knowing how to do all the other jobs that the other 2 were doing. And I started really considering, cross-training everybody. And like you said, you taught everyone the same way. I wanted everyone in my office to know every aspect of it, just in case they had to jump into the front desk or go out in the optical. And again, I'll say the word confidence again, where it's like, I just want them to feel confident, because once they have that feeling, then it's not like I'm throwing them to the wolves. Like, all right, good luck out there. And instead they'll feel a little bit better. And so for me, I realized training was super important at that point. And even just doing this, I'm realizing well, maybe I do need to take a full day like you did. And that could probably. And
I think I need to do the more in-office stuff too.
We should do an office swap. I'll go up there, you come down.
That's a great idea.
Yeah, why not?
I like it.
Okay.
Well, I think the benefit of this discussion is to offer a breadth of ideas and let people think about the successes that can be enjoyed with a variety of approaches. I don't think one size fits all. And the flexibility that both of you are discussing, I think, is really powerful for those listening and watching to think about with their own office culture and their own leadership culture and their own staff culture. So as we start to bring some thoughts even tighter together, a challenge that I see in organizations is all too often they do a training program. And the trouble with programs is they begin and end. And unfortunately, it's like a one and done. I'm going to give you a shot, a vaccination using today's vernacular, and you'll be forever fine. Yeah. And we all know that doesn't work. It's got to be ongoing. And it doesn't, Tanya, in your case, have to always be Saturdays. And Nick, in your case, it could include Saturdays or anything in between. So I'm wondering, what are you doing to sustain the momentum that you've gained via these training sessions?
For me, it's just kind of continuing to talk to the staff about the things that we've learned through, we did our one-day training right before COVID hit. And so I was struggling right in the beginning to remind them what we all had just learned since we shut down for a little while. And so we kind of hit on things ever so often. So I wasn't able to do it all together just because I couldn't be in 2 offices at the same time. But for me, I was able to do little snippets here and there. Like I would send out an email and just say, hey, remember this insurance bills this way, or remember that this contact does this for this way. And so I tend to send out little messages to both offices. I still travel to both. And so I can kind of highlight things throughout the day. So I don't stop the training. I like Dr. Rashid had mentioned that he does stuff on Saturday mornings. I think that would be a really nice thing. So I think I might actually start doing that so that we can talk to the staffs on Saturday mornings. But I just kind of continue little snippets here and there and try to find little ways to kind of continue that lesson and that training along.
Totally. So I think momentum is very important because, once you kind of start, once things are going great, you just feel like, I don't need to train anymore. Everything's going great. Well, I think training needs to continue. And if you stay on top of it, it won't be as overwhelming to the employees. If you just keep on Saturday morning, we call them gentle reminders. Gently remind them. And if my list is really long on Saturday, luckily there's a very well-known coffee shop right outside my door. So I go get some stuff and, free food works always. Right. So I think just to continue on, and then also for us, Dr. Bradley, to be open to suggestion. Our doctors that work with us, have great ideas. And I think that can continue and training us as well. And I still watch videos. I thought I knew my software in and out. And then this other doctor comes in and I'm like, what report's that? I'm constantly learning when you think everything's going great. So momentum is key. And I think it's got to make some way to do it.
I agree.
I love it. It reminds me of another quote from another executive at Disney that I used to work with. And he said, training is not a car wash through which you send employees and they'll forever be shiny and bright. And that includes ourselves. So continuous approach to perfection. We're never going to get there, but you got to give it a shot. And so you go through the car wash once and then again and again and again, and you just start to have that be part of your culture for yourself as well as for your teams. Thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate you being here, and I'm sure everybody who's listening and watching has had some tremendous takeaways. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
So on that note, you've heard some great ideas from Nick and Tanya. I learned a lot from them. And my hope and challenge to all of you is to take these ideas and do something in your own practice with them. The worst thing we can do is go to conferences or listen to conferences, in this case, or watch conferences, and then do nothing with the information you've been given. And we are going to continue this conversation in a variety of ways as we roll out the remaining podcasts. So I'm looking forward to learning more from the folks we interview and feedback that we get from you about what's working in these podcasts and how we can make them even better. So with that, I'm going to end with a kind of a out-of-the-box creativity thought, again, from my mentor, Van France. And he was always the one who would push us to greater heights when we would be victims and complaining about why we couldn't do things. And he would always say, budgets are always going to be tight. Headcount's always going to be tight, but by golly, creativity is always free. And I think that Tanya and Nick have elucidated and extrapolated and played with so many examples of creativity. And in some cases, yeah, they had to spend some money. In some cases, it was just a mindset shift. So with that, to close, I will pose the question that I brought up at the very beginning. How do you know if your organization is ready for training? We'll see you again.